The morning sunlight streamed through the tall windows of Eastwood Middle School, casting warm stripes across faded linoleum floors and overstuffed backpacks. October in Charlotte meant golden leaves, a light chill in the air, and a building full of restless students. In room 212, the 8th grade math class stirred to life with a cacophony of shuffling chairs, zipping binders, and murmured conversations. In the far back corner, beside a smudged window pane, sat 13-year-old Micah Daniels. He was tall for his age, all elbows and knees, with deep brown eyes and a quietness that cloaked him like a second skin. Micah didn't speak much. He didn't need to. He drifted through school like mist, unnoticed and untouched. While his classmates traded jokes and swapped homework answers, Micah sat with an open notebook in front of him, mostly blank except for the margins, where he scrawled lines of complex math that few adults could follow. Micah wasn't uninterested. On the contrary, numbers thrilled him. They made sense when the world didn't. But he'd learned early on that standing out came with risks. So he stayed quiet, never volunteered, never drew attention. That way, no one could laugh. No one could judge. No one could hurt him. But that fragile anonymity was about to shatter. At the front of the room stood Ms. Deirdre Lane, a veteran teacher with sharp eyes and a sharper tongue. Her button-down shirt was tucked crisply into tailored slacks, and a red pin peeked from behind her ear like a warning. She had high expectations, low tolerance for nonsense, and a reputation for turning underachievers into scholars, whether they liked it or not. On this particular morning, Ms. Lane looked especially tired. A thick stack of graded tests sat on her desk, bleeding red ink. She tapped them against the edge of the wood with a sigh and straightened. "Class," she said, her voice clear and clipped, "we need to talk." The room settled into a hush. Even the habitual whisperers went silent. "I am deeply disappointed," she continued, pacing the front row like a general before battle. "This was foundational algebra. Basic. Yet more than half of you failed." She picked up the top paper and waved it. "Except for one of you. One person aced this exam. No errors. Perfect logic. Care to guess who?" A ripple of curiosity moved through the room. Ms. Lane didn't wait for an answer. She turned the paper around, revealing the name scrawled neatly at the top. Micah Daniels. Head swiveled. Micah froze. "Micah," she said, voice cool, "come to the board." His stomach dropped. He hadn't spoken aloud in front of the class in months. Maybe the entire year. He stood slowly, his sneakers scraping the floor. A whisper darted through the rows. "He's gonna choke," someone murmured. Ms. Lane uncapped a marker and scrawled a problem on the board, a nightmare of variables, fractions, and exponents. Something they hadn't covered yet. Solve this. Micah stared at the board. The equation loomed like a mountain, but not to him. To him, it was a puzzle, and puzzles had solutions. He breathed in, out. The room faded. His hand moved. Slowly at first, cautiously, then faster. He simplified fractions, grouped terms, canceled variables, balanced both sides. Line by line, the board filled. The snickering died. Then came the whispers of a different kind. "Wait, is that right?" "I think it is." Even Ms. Lane stepped forward, squinting at the board. Her arms dropped to her sides. Her mouth parted slightly. Micah circled the answer with a firm stroke and turned. For a moment, the class was frozen. Then, without a word from Ms. Lane, someone clapped. Another followed. Soon, the room echoed with applause. Micah stood, dazed, as if the noise came from underwater. He wasn't used to eyes on him, not with respect anyway. He handed the marker back and returned to his seat, heart hammering. Ms. Lane cleared her throat. "This," she said, pointing at the board, "is mastery. Not just solving a problem, breaking it down, explaining it, owning it." She looked at Micah, and for the first time, her tone softened. "Micah, why haven't you spoken up before?" Micah hesitated. Then, quietly, no one asked. That answer hung in the air longer than any silence. Ms. Lane nodded slowly. "Well," she said, "we're asking now." After class, she handed him a flyer. Advanced Math Enrichment Program, district level. She tapped it. "You belong here. Don't let the volume of others drown out your voice." At home that night, Micah showed his parents. His mother cried. His father clapped him on the back and said, "Took him long enough." 2 weeks later, Micah sat in a new classroom with students from across the city. They were sharp, fast, competitive. But so was he. With each passing class, his confidence grew. He spoke. He solved. He even laughed. Back at Eastwood, everything changed. Micah was still quiet, but no longer invisible. Students asked him for help. Ms. Lane challenged him with extra problems. And Micah, for the first time in his life, challenged himself. He no longer scribbled in the margins. He wrote boldly in the center of the page. Not because he had to, because he wanted to. Micah Daniels had stepped into the light, and he was just getting started. By spring, Micah's name had spread beyond the classroom. He was nominated for the District Math League, and though he hesitated, Ms. Lane encouraged him to try. It's not about winning, she told him. It's about growing. So Micah entered. The day of the competition, he sat at a long table in a high school auditorium flanked by students 2 years older than him. The problems were brutal, the time limits shorter, and yet he thrived. Micah found a strange calm in the storm of equations. He didn't win first place, he placed third. But as he stood holding his certificate, flashbulbs going off and his name announced over the intercom, he didn't care. Third meant he belonged. After the ceremony, a woman approached him, stylish and firm-spoken. I run a summer institute for gifted students at Carolina Tech. We'd like to invite you to apply. Full scholarship. Your teacher said you'd be perfect. Micah blinked. Me? She smiled. Absolutely. That summer, Micah traveled for the first time out of state, lived on a college campus, and spent 6 weeks studying not just math, but physics, logic, and problem design. He met others like him, quiet thinkers, gifted solvers, students who didn't always raise their hands, but always had the answer. By the time school resumed in the fall, Micah Daniels was no longer the invisible boy in the back row. He was a leader in the math club, a tutor for younger students, and a candidate for early college admission. Yet he stayed grounded. He still loved the quiet. He still watched the wind through the trees. But now he knew. The world saw him. And he had more to show it.